We are talking about the referendum. Now, two individuals here, the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga and the president that is His Excellency, the president that is Uhuru Kenyatta. They made a handshake, and this is what led to the giving birth of the Building Bridges initiative. The Building Bridges are expected to give a report in October. But there is one thing that might be a challenge to the Building Bridges initiative in terms of weighing in where do we go, and that is the Punguza Mizigo. Remember, this is a proposal. The hashtag has been Punguza Mizigo Bill 2019. But what exactly is this bill all about? Let's take a look at it. Well, they say that by reducing parliament, we save 155 billion shillings. Punguza bill says that by abolishing the deputy governor's position, we save 5.6 billion shillings. Abolishing nominations, we save 30 billion shillings. Adopting a one-term presidency that is going to take 7 years, that is, according to their proposal, will save us 20 billion shillings. By capping salaries, we save 24 billion shillings. Automating voter registration, they say it will save 25 billion, and automating general elections will save 50 billion shillings. Remember, also concerning the general elections, they propose that your ID should be what you use to vote, not that you go again and register. They also propose that restructuring independent commissions that will save 16 billion. And lastly, by severely punishing thieves of public money, this is with regards to corruption, we save at least 3.5 trillion. Well, in total, their proposed constitutional amendment bill will save Kenyans 3.78 trillion shillings, according to the Punguza Mizigo bill. And it, so far, has received over 1 million signatures and has been taken to the county assemblies. And after it has been passed, it will be taken over to Parliament, where we have the two houses, the Senate and the National Assembly, for approval. Well, this is with regards to the referendum. Well, what is going to happen? What next? Will the members of County Assembly approve this bill? Remember, they need around 24 counties to say yes. Well, welcome. This is all about the fight or the war concerning referendum.
Divided opinion continues to greet the push for a referendum following the successful collection of over 1 million signatures by the Third Way Alliance, while some leaders support the call to cut the cost of government as proposed in the Punguza Mizigo initiative. Others have cautioned against rushing to amend the constitution.
But I can say right now, all we are doing is recurrent. There's nothing in development. And this is very serious for a country. So this is an area where we need to do something by reducing the number of people who are employed by Wanjiku. Those are members of parliament, the governors, and we can have few regional governments, and also we can remove the women rep and all that, because we need to have, and with the technology, you don't need many leaders nowadays.
He wants to reduce the size of running government. I want to advise Ekuru Okot to do his mathematics properly. Perhaps because he's a lawyer, he's not very good with numerics. Let me tell him that the cost of running parliament is only 1% of the entire cost of running national government.
We don't want that in the whatever proposal to do nini atutaki. Governors, we are satisfied with the 2 terms. We want now to do other things.
Ni lazima hawa wenye wana propose, wanapendekeza, walete details. Wakisema tunataka president akuwe miaka 7. What reasons are you giving?
It's like we are nurturing our new constitution, which we have not done enough. It's like parents having children, and before they are even 10 years old, you have given up and you are abandoning your child. I think as a nation, we need to give time to our new constitution.
National Assembly Majority Leader, while speaking in Garissa, supported calls for a referendum, but dismissed the proposals by Ekuru Okot.
Members of Parliament from pastoral communities who are their patron, we will agree in principle that our county assemblies will not approve the reduction of our constituencies.
The Ekuru Aukot's party wants the number of MPs reduced from over 400 currently to less than 200. The party also seeks to have the positions of woman representative, nominated MPs and nominated MCAs abolished in a bid to reduce the wage bill. Women leaders have vowed to campaign against any proposal seeking to reduce their space in leadership.
At the moment, we have the gains that we have already achieved. We wouldn't want any of that to be lost. We don't want to lose the positions that we are holding, and as women, we just want to add on to what we already have.
The Punguza Mizigo bill also seeks to change the presidential term limit to one term of 7 years from the current 2 5-year terms. Kevin Washira, Channel News.
All right. Referendum, which way? Well, to help us demystify this, I am joined by Honorable Bilo Kero. He is the former Mandera County Senator. Karibu sana mheshimiwa.
Thank you.
He's someone who can be able to help us understand. But now, looking at what you've seen there, referendum, do you support it? Do you think it is high time that we change the discussion, and what should we be talking about precisely?
Thank you. I think in principle, I don't support a referendum to amend the Constitution, in principle.
You don't support it?
Because I think this Constitution, the challenge we have is not with the inadequacy of the Constitution, but in my view, the challenge we've had in this country is to implement the Constitution effectively. And, you know, that's the challenge in every aspect, whether it is the executive or the legislature. The challenges we have had is there is no commitment to implementing it to the letter or spirit, really, of the Constitution. That is why we're having challenges. So there are, of course, always, I mean, any law that is done by, you know, human beings, there's always need to improve on it. But I don't think this Constitution is fundamentally flawed, you know, to the extent that we really need to amend it. That if we don't amend it, that something will, you know, things will go seriously wrong in this country. I don't think really.
But doesn't that have an effect on the development of the nation? Remember, it's all about thinking with regards to the number of representation. Do you think we are overrepresented as Kenyans? Because one person, you, for example, you are represented by a member of county assembly, by a member of parliament, by a senator, by a governor. Aren't we overrepresented?
No, I think it's the concept of democracy that we have in this country is called representative democracy, which means we can't have all the 50 million Kenyans going to parliament or going to counties to represent us. We have represented by elected leaders, and that representative democracy requires representation at national level and also at grassroots level. And it's the practice all over the world. And I think it's the reason for this is democracy is not just for people to get an opportunity to have parliaments and assemblies to air their views, but I think the reason is because that is where you make decisions that affect you. So at county level, you need it so that decisions affecting that county or that region or that area is made by the people, and they're the ones who determine what they want. At the national level, as a nation also, we need to have representation so that we can decide on what, and that is the practice all of us. So we don't look at it vertically and say, look, we have a president and a governor, why do you need an MP? And that's not the way it's looked at.
No, but so far, are you satisfied that with this constitution,
no, we are not
overrepresented?
We are not overrepresented in my view. I think the argument that we are overrepresented is misplaced. When the Kregler Commission looked at that, and that was the key thing they were looking at post-2007, 2008 violence, they recommended that we need to increase representation. This is why the boundaries were reviewed and the constituencies were increased. And so they looked at the good practice really all over the world. How many people, for example, should a member of parliament represent, you know, in a national parliament? And this is how they came up with the figure that you know, that over 33,000 should, and this is how we ended up increasing the so I think these things are critical. I think we are missing the point, because what is critical in any nation and particularly a country like ours, is that democracy, that opportunity to be able to express our views, to be able to determine what we want as you know, as a people, as a region, as a county, as a nation. So it is critical. We cannot, it's expensive, but I think there's no way you can negotiate for a lack of democracy, because the alternative would be chaos. I mean, the alternative is a dictatorship. When you say that you don't have representation, then what are you saying? That one person
that is trying to be a dictator.
So we won't. I think it's better, and that's why there's this level of representation. Yeah.
Well, Punguza Mizigo is saying reducing parliament will save 155 billion. As I had mentioned earlier, abolishing deputy governor's position, nominations, nominated seats, having one-term presidency, even talking about the reduction of these seats, saving up to billions of shillings. You believe it will not save us billions as in terms of budgeting?
Well, obviously you'll save, I mean, money, but I think it's they looked at it from. It depends on what perspective you look at.
Okay.
Our budget has been growing, significantly. I mean, today the last budget we've had is 3.2 trillion. That's a huge, budget. So what you should be looking at when you say you want to punguza mizigo or you want to reduce really is you look at that budget annually, because the budget is done annually. 3.2 trillion. Do we need that kind of expenditure? What is it for? Why is our budget so huge? Because what happens is that out of that 3.2 trillion, we are collecting taxes of about half, and the other half we are borrowing. So the challenge here really is not about the money that is being spent. We'll be happy to spend even 5 trillion if we can have it. But I think the challenge is that we don't have that kind of revenue. 1. 2, that means you are taxing Kenyans more so that you generate that 50% of the revenue. 3, you are borrowing money. You're sinking the country into huge debts. I think those are the concerns. Now, from that perspective, yes, then there's need to reduce our expenditure. I think that should be the focus, how to reduce our public expenditure. Then I think the way they went about it, identifying what institutions are responsible for that huge expenditure, I think that's where they, in my view, their focus was misplaced, because Parliament is about democracy, is about representation, is a critical institution, without which you are going to go down to democracy. So even if and the expenditure is not huge. But I mean, as you had, it's not more than 1%. I mean, the total expenditure of budget Parliament is about 1% of the 3 trillion. So, or 1.5%. It's not all combined, National Assembly plus the Senate. So even if we scrapped the entire Parliament, I mean, you're not going to really reduce our public expenditure by more than 1 percentage point. And the consequences will be grave. Then it means you'll have a dictatorship, really.
So the dictatorship in terms of now what is being, those proposing this bill of Punguza Mizigo?
I think their focus, whoever drafted this bill, I think the focus was more of, let's punish this institution, because they're earning more salaries and they're getting they're very many, and I think that is where the focus was, and they missed the point. I think really, yes, we have problems with our Parliament.
Yes.
They're always pushing for more pay, and that is a genuine concern. But I think to amend the constitution in order to reduce our public expenditure is really misplaced. The public expenditure is an annual thing.
But then how can we as a country reduce the public expenditure? Looking at what they're saying, well, I'll be the devil's advocate in this case here. When you talk about reduction of expenditure, look at the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. They have been in the spotlight for the past couple of weeks now, even with regards to the members of parliament salaries, looking at how much we use even with regards to the projects as a nation. So far, yesterday we just had the CS or teach being, on the dock in Milimani courts with regards to corruption. They have a proposal that will help curb corruption, and this proposal will reduce expenditure. What do you believe is the solution for the country to reduce expenditure, if not this?
I've gone through that bill. I think, with all due respect, the proposals they have for fighting corruption is very simplistic. It's about, when you are charged with corruption, it must be determined within 30 days. the appeal must be concluded in 15 days. I mean, it's not realistic. This is, you know, there's a rule of law. The people who go to court, the courts as a process. You can't, you know, those things are not, some things are not
You
practical.
believe it doesn't work like that?
No, I don't think things are that, you know, and everyone who is charged with corruption must be given life sentence. If you steal a pencil and if you steal $1 trillion, you'll all go for life sentence. I think they have been very simplistic on that, and I don't think I think the challenge we have in this country, and in my view, the way to reduce this thing is to enhance the institutions of accountability. Because like I said, it's lack of accountability that is creating a situation where we're ending up with a budget of 3 point. So if they focused on that, for example, limiting the powers of the executive to borrow, limiting the powers of the government, you know, of the executive to tax people, and giving more powers to the judiciary in controlling, you know, the parliament, because parliament is what has been used to rubber stamp all the decisions of the executive.
Even the judiciary has been on the spot for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. So the one positive thing I have seen really in this thing is to check provisions they have made of checking the powers of the National Assembly by giving Senate powers to veto. So then National Assembly, because that is where the challenge is really. Because even when you look at the current laws we have, there's enough provisions in law to check the executive. Because National Assembly can say, no, we're not approving 3.2 trillion. Go back and reduce your budget to 2 trillion. Well, we have to live within our means. Well, go and reduce your debt. I mean, they're not doing it. They're simply accepting everything. So I think the institutions of accountability, I think that is where we need more, you know, to tighten things. But I don't think if you start chasing, sack this guy and reduce these MPs, and it's not going to help, really, at the end of the day.
So starting from curbing corruption will not help?
Curbing, they haven't really dealt, there's no, you know, new ideas in terms of fighting corruption that I've seen in that bill. I've gone through it. Except, I mean, the focus is on the punishment and on how quickly to deal with it. But there isn't really any other additional and it's not, by the way, it's not for lack of institutions that corruption is expanding in this country. I mean, we have
the institutions.
Yes, that's what I said. It's about accountability. It's about lack of implementation. It's about the power. Nothing stops the president waking up in the morning and saying, look, my minister has been implicated this morning on the Good Morning program on KBC. You know, there are disclosures on that minister. He's fired. I'm firing him.
But
he's not firing.
That can't happen.
So if he doesn't fire, he has the powers.
He does have the power.
He does have the powers.
But nothing stops we cannot go for vigilante system.
That's not vigilante. That's the law. That's all over the world. If you have been implicated and you know and he has information, it's not like us. The president gets information from many sources. He has information, and if he's able to act, and that's the practice all over. You are mentioned. You see people stepping down as ministers in the rest of the world, in developed countries, for, you know, $10,000, $20,000 or something spent, and it's about the office, political culpability. It's about taking responsibility. It's not about conviction. You know, here our focus is that unless you have been convicted in a law, in court of law, then you cannot. No, in government, it's enough for you to step aside or to leave that job if there is political culpability. That means something happened in your ministry. You fail to take action. You are responsible and you go. That's the way it is.
Mheshimiwa, looking at Kenya, I would not like to be negative, but we don't see anyone resigning. No one will ever resign anytime soon with regards to corruption.
They should be fired.
Should be fired.
And the president has powers. The governor has powers to fire his executives. The president has powers in law to fire. Nothing stops them.
But they cannot do that.
Huh?
They cannot do that.
For political expediency, they have not done it. But nothing stops them from firing. Absolutely. You can fire in the morning.
I would just like you to maybe mention just in general, but allow me to digress before I ask my question. Between the Senate and the National Assembly, which one should be the upper house in your own view? Because that's where the debate at some point has come in.
You know, each house has its own role. I mean, even global, even if you look at the US, every house has its own role. National Assembly, the world over, the main responsibilities has always been in setting the budgets, approving the budgets of the national government. So that has been a role that the National Assembly has always had. And the Senate has always been there in most countries to check the excesses of the National Assembly.
Oversight.
Yeah. It's about really quality control. I mean, if you just have one institution, it becomes rogue and does whatever it wants. You know, then that's why we have Senate, the upper house, to try and Senate as a upper house to try and limit the excesses of the National Assembly. But in our case, in addition, the same way in the US and so forth, they look after the interest also of the counties.
Okay. Now, you, in your own words, you say that the claims that the financial burden or the ballooning budget expenditure is the primary, reason that we should be reviewing it. You said we should not done that. That there is no problem with what we have as a country, even with regards to the budget expenditure, and that the National Assembly and County Assembly sizes are not to be blamed, and the claims that they should be downsized to save money is actually something that you don't vouch for. You feel it is not necessary. You said devolution is not a problem with the county governments, hence proposals to reduce them isn't the solution. But then I wonder, why do you find these arguments not only hollow and baseless, but in your own words you say they are grounded in ignorance?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that if you look at a budget of 3.2 trillion and you say our problem is in the legislature, the total budget of legislature is about 40 billion. It's just about a percentage, 1%. Then you're missing the point, because if you say you really want to punguza the music, or the music on the Kenyans is what? It's not taxes. It's the taxes, isn't it? Because that money is collected through taxes. Number two is the debt, because you also have to pay the debt through taxes.
Yeah.
So really, at the end of the day, what you need to look at is, can we reduce the public expenditure? We can do that in several ways. One, by rationalizing the size of government. This is something that we've talked about for many years, as a country. And that's why in the new constitution we said the cabinet cannot be more than 18. But we have had a situation where the government, the executive, the president has circumvented that. And you find instead of 18, then you create departments, and then you create more permanent secretaries, and you still have the same thing. Number two, when we created in the new constitution the devolution, the understanding, and it's very clearly provided for in the constitution, is that most of the functions are supposed to be devolved to the counties, and resources are supposed to follow that, the functions. So we have a situation where, for example, in the Ministry of Health, 96% of the functions of the ministry have been devolved to the county governments. Yet you find the ministry at national level is still intact and still getting budgets, 50, 60 billion shillings annually. When the role in the constitution is only on policy. You do this, you go to Ministry of Water, it's the same. That function has been devolved to the county governments.
Yeah.
In that constitution, you will find that even the water bodies, the regional water bodies, the water service boards, all these things are supposed to go down to the county government. But national government has decided not to release them, and so continue allocating hundreds of billions, to these institutions. So when you look at the Ministry of Agriculture, it's the same. So you'll find that the challenge we have is national government did not want to, or does not want to, let go of their role completely. And they want to remain as they were before the constitution. And so consequently what's happening is that huge amounts of money is being allocated to the national, as if nothing has happened. Yet
as if there's no devolution.
As if there's no devolution. So you are giving devolution 10% of what you're spending.
Some county governments are even blaming the national government of sabotage.
So what Kenyans need to look at is that out of the 3.2 trillion expenditure for 2019-20, how much is going to the county government? It's 327 billion is what they're asking for through the Senate, isn't it? That's exactly 10%. 10%. So I mean, really, we are missing the point that we are in a situation where we think devolution is. So the government is telling you, national government is telling you, the money is getting wasted in devolution. The money is getting wasted in National Assembly. The money, you're being told the wrong. Yet 90% of the money is being left to the executive, and that's where the trouble is.
Do you feel the problem is within the executive?
There's a lot of wastage. There's a lot of wastage. There's a lot of inefficiency in national government, duplication. And that is where, if someone really looks at and that is where my challenge with National Assembly, because that's their responsibility. If they took a pen and pencil and went through what they allocate to the national government ministries, they can reduce our budget by half.
Of which
Conveniently, they
the
can
National
reduce our budget
Assembly
by half.
still wants allowances, house allowance, night allowances, affecting the budget. Well, you talked about rationalizing the size of government. Just give me one example of how we can rationalize the size of government. Just one.
One is this one I've just talked to you about. The national government should cede the roles that have been given to the devolution. For example, all those functions that are supposed to be done by the county government, you let it go. You let it go completely. Let all those institutions, whatever,
does it have anything to do with the numbers?
Because you are duplicating. Yes, they are duplicating. Exactly what is happening is that the same thing. If national government is if counties are putting up water dams, national government is putting up the same water dams. Parliament is putting up through the CDF. National, you are duplicating. Number two,
meaning
the ministries. They can rationalize by reducing the ministries' functions, because those functions have been taken over by the county governments. Why do you have Afia House intact the way it was before devolution? What are they doing? Hospitals are under the county governments, except the referral hospitals. Everything else had gone to the county government. At national level, we should only have the national referral hospitals and policy. But you find the same ministries there, they're getting nearly a fifth of what the entire county governments combined are getting. You go to Ministry of Agriculture, we're spending billions trying to put up irrigation at national level. That function is all gone to the county government. Give the money to the counties, let them work on their own.
So here we have duplication of roles.
So there is a lot of duplication, and that's why I'm saying that you need to rationalize. They need to reduce really some of the functions and give it to the counties.
And that's why it brings us back to the specific individuals. If we have, for example, in health, we have the national government that has the ministry. It has its own people in charge of health, the health sector. Those who are in charge of different departments within the national government. The same departments in health can be found at the county level, the county government, where we have individuals in charge of the health departments. It goes across the board. That is the basis of overrepresentation that we were talking about earlier on.
No, it's not overrepresentation. This is the duplication I'm talking about. This is the lack of rationalization. This is failure by the government to implement the constitution. The constitution is very clear. These functions go to devolution. They should not be at national level. The government says, no, I'm keeping these functions. So what happens? Take provincial administration. The law is very clear in the constitution. Within 5 years, they should have really, it should have been changed completely into. But now what do we have? We have provincial administration and county administration parallel in the same. So I think there is no commitment to really effectively implementing our constitution. This is the challenge. This is why we have this ballooning budget.
All right. Do you think that the creation of the World Development Fund and increasing allocation to the fund of funds from the national government to the county from 15 to 35% as proposed will enhance the implementation of development projects by the counties?
Yeah. The increase of the money to devolution will always be welcome. I think there's no one who would. I mean, it's common sense. When you have given all those functions to counties, you expect more resources to go to the counties. So raising the minimum to 35 from 15 to 35,
it will work out.
It's a good thing. But that's not where the challenge is. Okay. That's not where the challenge is. Because even now with the minimum of 15, you can still have 50%. But the problem we're having is the way National Assembly has insisted that we will give this amount, and the Senate says no, this amount. And so what these guys should have done in the Punguza, they've really missed the point. All they need to do is give powers to the Commission on Revenue Allocation, because that is an independent commission set up to share the money between the national and the county governments. They are required by law to give recommendations to the Parliament. But Parliament, for whatever reason, has always ignored, National Assembly in particular. So all they need to do is say that the recommendation by Commission on Revenue Authority is binding, so that because these guys look at what are the national interests, what does national government need compared to what counties need, and they allocate money, rationally between the two. So I think that's what they need to do. Give CRA more powers. That would solve the issue of whether you raise the figure minimum to 15 or to 35 is not really the issue, because the maximum is open.
So
that's where the challenge is.
do we have sufficiency in terms of funding to the counties?
It's grossly inadequate. I don't think counties are getting, most counties are getting money just enough to pay to meet their current expenditures. That's why we have challenges in many counties.
And that's why we're talking about now the revenue
That's why
allocation.
they need more money, because that's where the development needs to be. National government does not need to carry out development. They need to give the money to the counties to determine what the people want. The whole idea about evolution is for the people to determine what they want. It's not for national government to decide for them what they want. I think that's where the issue is. That's where the issue is. Now, on the Ward Development Fund, I think that is misplaced. I think it's just an attempt to try and put in a sweetener for county assemblies.
Of what?
To get the votes for the county assemblies. And because we have a challenge with CDF. That should have been scrapped, and the court ordered it should be scrapped, really, because that was brought in when devolution was not there, in order to devolve funds to the county, to constituencies. But I think you don't need wards is even making the matter worse, because I think at county you cannot. I've seen what happened when devolution started. You know what counties were doing is they decided to give money, to the wards. So every ward gets money, and you're told, bring your proposals. They just want $1 million for a classroom, $1 million for the. That's not development, really, because you need people to sit as a county.
It leads to wastage and even corruption.
Yes, as a county, what do they need? They need a county referral hospital. They need a county college. They need a county. It's better for the money to be determined at county level. They decide on what is suitable, and they can have some development in one ward and another development in another ward. But to allocate money at ward level, it's not a solution, really. It's really going to.
You're saying it's just trying to
please the county,
to please the county assemblies.
So they vote. That's the whole idea.
But now, speaking of voting, do you think it will pass within the 24 counties? Remember,
no.
I remember Aden Duale had said, and I quote, "Pastoralists are not ready to pass the bill if it will reduce MCA seats and constituency-based seats. If members of the Garissa County Assembly pass the bill, we shall deal with them as a community."
No, obviously there's nothing you can do about it. But I think, of course, as an MCA, I would feel happy passing that bill. One, because more money will come to the county. Two, our seats as MCA are reserved. Three, there's a provision for ward development fund. So for MCAs, there's every reason why they should pass. And people will have no problem with it in Garissa, because then there's more money going to Garissa.
You feel it?
But I think the issue is it is likely to face very stiff opposition not passed, because of the fundamental reason that in Kenya, Baba has not said it, and Uhuru has not said it, and so on and so on. It's the political heavyweights that Kenyans look at the end of the day.
Circumfancy?
Well, we seem to be, as a nation, in the grip of this big man,
big man syndrome.
So that we wait to see what the big political parties and the leaders and the guys who roll those bankroll those institutions determine. And so they will look at Punguza Migizo, Nianani, who's pushing it, Mr. Kuru, and that's the way Kenyans look at things, even if it's in their interest. You always look at what have the big guys said, and I think that's likely to make it very unlikely that it will pass.
Na kama hajaongea hatufanyi kitu yote.
Yes.
ODM chairman John Mbadi had said that he described the bill as populist, with no real solutions to the country's challenges, and he even advised the members of county assemblies not to be distracted by it, but to wait for the Building Bridges Initiative report.
No, is wrong. I mean, there are good things in the bill, and with all due respect, there are positive things in the bill. For example, I said earlier, giving Senate the power,
the veto power,
the veto power is critical, so that they can check the excesses of the National Assembly. All the chaos we have in terms of the poor kind of legislation that we have, the taxes that Kenyans have been taxed unnecessarily by the national government, some of these things are, and the failure of accountability, the ballooning expenditure of national government. This is the failure of the National Assembly. So I think having an institution like the Senate to oversee the functions of, to check the National Assembly, this is important. I like that bit. The National Assembly has approved appointment of CSEs and ambassadors and people, and a week or so later you found those people have been implicated again in corruption. They have not bothered to, they've always looked at other interests. And so I think to have that checks and balance is critical, like we have in US and so forth.
All right.
Number two, there are other positive things, like what you said earlier on IBC, that, let us just have any Kenyan with an ID walking into the poll booth and voting. You don't need voters registration cards.
That your ID is your registration card.
The one-year term for presidency is a brilliant idea.
7 years, actually.
7 years.
7 years meaning
really
one term.
Is a refreshing idea, and I think it's brilliant. And I think the arguments for it, you know, it's because the challenge we have in this country is everybody, every group, every tribe wants to be in power. So one term and you go, because re-election is always where the challenge is. So I think that's also brilliant. So there are positive things in the bill. It's not all gloom. And so, but I see where Mbadi is coming from. Mbadi and his team, they are all about BBI and Baba. And so, but that is really misplaced. BBI has no legal it's not established under any legal framework. I mean,
they should not wait for the report by the Building Bridges Initiative.
I don't think that would not be any different from this one. It serves a particular interest.
You know, here we are talking about two, I don't know if I said bills, the Building Bridges Initiative and the Punguza Mizigo. They both, at some point, some members of parliament say they need to be merged together, that Dr. Ekuro Court should bring the Punguza Mizigo initiative into the proposal to the Building Bridges Initiative and combine them, because they're both working towards the referendum.
You see, in the BBI, we do not know what they want. They have not recommended a referendum yet. Mm-hmm. They haven't issued any report. And they have said very clearly that they have not determined or decided that there will be a referendum.
Yes.
It's just a perception out there that because the people who set it up, Uhuru and Raila, have talked about, you know, referendum. So there is a perception that this thing is all about.
It's all about it. But they have not yet given the report. We expect
they
it
haven't.
In
so
October.
I think it's not going to be taken for granted. I don't think it's that easy that they come up with a bill and automatically Kenyans will vote for it because it came from the BBI. I think it's not going to be that. I think Kenyans are tired about, you know, frankly, the theme about Kenya is Punguza Mizigo is there. Kuchoka is Mechoka is. So it's what you want to bring as BBI must be something really that is so critical that you can convince Kenyans that yes, I need a referendum for it.
But Kenyans are convinced if they can get 1 million signatures.
But Kenyans are not convinced about what? What do they want? Kenyans have not said.
Punda Mechoka.
Yeah, but what do they want? Scrap parliament, scrap presidencies. What do they want to? Kenyans have not said we want. The Kenyans want good governance. Good governance is not about constitution. The constitution is perfect. There's nothing wrong with our constitution. What we have is a problem of governance. So it's about the people. It's about the persons who are running the institutions. Otherwise, we have the right institutions. We have the right. You know, the legal framework, we have everything. It's about accountability, it's about leadership. So I don't think we have, the challenge we have in this country is every time something is wrong, we blame institutions. We don't blame the people. So we keep saying, let us amend this again. So what happens if we amend the constitution and again we still have problems? We'll say, let us amend the constitution again. No, I don't think.
But
that's
they say
why
the constitution should be there just to, you know, after it has worked for some time, it can be reviewed.
There's nothing wrong with the constitution.
Since 2010 till now.
The argument, I know Kenambadi and his team have been using BBI, it's all based on something they call inclusivity.
Which Punguza Mizigo maybe at some point
what is inclusivity? The constitution is very clear about inclusivity. This constitution we have, in every chapter, on chapter 10 about the goals, you know, this the inclusivity is one of the key things. What it means is that for every appointment, for example, that is being made in this country, whether it's cabinet, or whether it's judges, or whether it's, you know, anybody, any appointment, ambassadors, whatever, you must take into consideration the diversity of the country in terms of religion, in terms of regions, in terms of ethnicity. This is clear in the constitution. So there has to be inclusivity. The constitution already provides for it. What these guys are asking for is inclusivity on the high table and state house. Rais asikule peke yake, hata sisi tukule.
We should be included. That is inclusivity.
So that you contest for presidency. If you miss, you want to be included in the table. I mean, that is really something Kenyans should reject. And that is what drives this BBI. There's nothing else. There's the perception that if you all run, you know, the leaders of all these tribes or regions should be allowed to sit on the high table so that they can eat.
So you believe the Building Bridges Initiative, BBI is inclined towards certain individuals or certain people to favor them?
This is what is on the media. This is why you find certain political groups are really pushing for it, and they have always said in public rallies that we want our persons there. We want more people to be included in running the government. So that's, you can see clearly they have said what exactly it is about. But of course, we'll wait for what comes out.
At some point, if we go for referendum, we will have to get a referendum question. You know,
Yes.
in the last referendum that we had, we only had one question: do you want the constitution, or do you want it to be changed? So it was yes or no, machungwa, and this. But now, in this referendum, we at some point we need to get the specific clauses of the constitution that needs to be amended, of which you say we don't need a referendum, but they say that we need a referendum, and they are working under Article 257 of the constitution. We will need a referendum question. Do you believe that at some point we can be able to acquire that in a way that will help Kenyans?
I think obviously the people who set up BBI have an objective, and the objective is they want to bring some changes.
Even
whether those changes are to serve their interest or not, that is the objective. Now, they would probably do that, from what we are reading in the media, through an amendment to the Constitution. And an amendment to the Constitution is likely to be a series of amendments to the Constitution. It's not a question of yes or no.
Yes.
Like when we had a new Constitution, because there we got rid of the old Constitution and brought a new one, so it was a yes and no. But this one, specific amendments that you have to vote for. So depending on what question they will bring, because up to now there's no idea what they want. Do they want to scrap this presidency system and bring parliamentary? We don't know what they want to do.
But maybe they may even have a case where we have so many questions and the Kenyans will have to choose with regards to this will amend this part of the constitution.
It will be very difficult to have a situation where you have many amendments and you have to vote for every amendment, separately. That would be a bit of a challenge in a referendum. It would always be easier to have a bill, just like the one of Punguza, very clearly done bill on the amendments you want to the Constitution, and then Kenyans will be asked to vote for the bill, in totality.
Whether it's a yes or a no.
Yes, so that then once it's yes, then it amends the whole Constitution. But not on clause by clause. I mean, you vote for the bill and that's it. I think, and from our tradition, they're likely to put in sweeteners, and of course, everybody's ideal sweetener nowadays is devolution. So they'll probably put in something on devolution, enhancing money in theory, and they're not doing it in practice today. The people who are now pushing for this thing are the same ones who are challenging devolution money every day.
You're talking about Punguza Mizigo?
No, I'm saying the BBI. They're likely already, you hear what the ODM, the Jubilee guys who are supporting BBI is saying that, they'll increase money for the counties and so forth. But in reality, those who are sitting in the National Assembly today, from those political parties, are the ones who are most vocal in resisting more allocations to be given to the counties. But when they are out there, it's always about, we are champions of devolution, we are the guardians of devolution, we want more money for devolution, but in the National Assembly, they don't want a penny to go. So I think devolution will always be used by both sides, by BBI or anybody else to try and get votes in a referendum. But in my view, let us wait for the Constitution and for their question, and let's see what they want to come up with, because they have not yet decided on what they want to, but let's see.
Now, let me look at democracy. You mentioned democracy earlier on. And this is with regards to one statement that the majority leader of the National Assembly, that is Honorable Eden Duale, had talked about. Now, just your opinion concerning this. When he said that if members of Garissa County Assembly pass the bill, we shall deal with them as a community. Don't you think this is at some point suppressive in a way?
Of course, that is a threat, but in my view, it's a hollow threat. I mean, it doesn't really, politicians always make those kinds of statements, but I don't think there's any thing you can do as a parliament to the MCAs, because MCAs are elected representatives of the people. They're elected the same way you have been elected. And the reason why we set up county assemblies is so that we can have representative democracy at the grassroots level. So MCAs would also be selling you know, why they think they support this particular bill, and they look at it from the point of view that more money is coming to the wards, more money is coming to the counties.
But these words will not have an effect on them.
But I agree on, there's one thing about what he says which might make sense, that if you reduce parliament to 147 members of parliament, and then the pastoralists, you know, some communities will look like, would see clearly that the number of seats they have in parliament would have been reduced, and therefore their clout in parliament will be reduced. And so in that context, yes, that it is disadvantageous for us to have fewer members of parliament. And so therefore, let's not allow this thing. So it's people.
But that's where rationalization comes in.
Yeah, but people will look at, you know, too. I mean, between having more MPs and getting more money to their counties, you know, and more power to their counties.
So it's
you
confusing
know,
at some point.
So I think people would, if I was a resident in Garissa, I would go for more resources and more power to the county than more MPs in the National Assembly.
All right. As we bring this discussion to a close here, just in just less than 30 seconds, Mheshimiwa, what would you advise Kenyans to do? What should we look out for as a country? Do we go for it? Do we leave it there?
No, I think as Kenyans, our challenge has always been about good governance. It's about governance, really. We have no other problem. We have beautiful constitution.
All right.
We have adequate legal environment. We have institutions of governance, very good institutions, by the way, better than you'll find in many parts of Africa. So it's about the people. It's about getting good leaders into parliament. It's about getting accountability for the leadership.
Okay.
And so, but with regards to this particular agitation for referendum, I think Kenyans need to look at what exactly is the objective of the referendum, or the questions that are before the referendum. So if they don't fundamentally change the lives of Kenyans, we should reject it. We should not waste our time amending the constitution when we are not able to implement the existing one fully.
It's a waste of time. All right. That is Honorable Bill Okero, former Mandera County Senator. Karibu sana. And thank you very much for airing your views with regards to referendum.
Thanks, Ram.
Looking forward to interacting with you and even further. We shall keep this discussion going on. We have come to the end of this show. That is a good place to end the discussion. See you again tomorrow morning on Good Morning Kenya at 6 a.m. On behalf of everyone, my name is Roa Maguko. May God bless you and God bless the work of your hands.